Hello and welcome to the CivilNet studio. I'm your host, Paul Vartan Sukiasyan. Armenia is at a very pointed moment right now, both internally and externally. It's attempting to finally settle the long-running dispute with neighbors Azerbaijan and Turkey, but on the inside, at the same time, it has an unprecedented dispute between church and state. So here to help make sense of all this is Hrair Balian, an expert on conflict resolution. He was director of the conflict resolution program at the Carter Center in Atlanta for many years and is now writing a book on why 30 years of Karabakh negotiations failed. Thank you for being with us, Hrair.
Thank you for having me.
So it can be difficult to get a sense of what the full population of Armenians think, but at least online there's a very loud cohort of people who are extremely skeptical about this plan to sign a deal with Azerbaijan to finally bring this conflict to an end. Or they think that this is just another stalling tactic or a ploy to destroy Armenia down the road. So there's a lot of good reason for this distrust, of course. Azerbaijan and Aliyev have not done anything to make Armenians think that he's serious. But at the same time, I mean, what is our other choice? What do you think about this normalization deal?
As you said, Paul, there are reasons why people are skeptical about this negotiations. Many reasons, I should say, why people are skeptical about this negotiations. Their right to be skeptical, their right to demand more from the government, more transparency from the government. But my conviction is that we have no option to negotiations today. We have to negotiate, and we have to separate when we question the negotiations. We have to separate the fact of whether or not we need to negotiate from who is negotiating, what is being negotiated, and where is it that Armenia is making concessions, either mutual concessions or unilateral concessions. Different subjects. Yeah.
So being an expert in conflict resolution, you've seen firsthand the ramifications of what a signed peace treaty can be. So when it comes to speculation as to what this might result in for Armenia out there, I see a lot of fatalistic notions. This is the end. Either some of them are saying, no, Azerbaijan is just going to keep on getting one concession after another, and then maybe finally sign a peace treaty, but then the next day invade, and then that will be over. Or others were saying, no, he'll just never going to sign a treaty, and then eventually he'll just get tired of toying with Armenia and destroy it. I mean, this is the type of very, very dark predictions that people have for Armenia's future. But at the same time, why would he be? If a peace treaty means nothing, why wouldn't he have signed it already? So, I mean, for you, is a peace treaty that flimsy that if he ends up signing it, he can just do whatever he wants? Or is there something more to it and consequences that would come from the signing?
There are reasons why people are skeptical about the negotiations because of the history of negotiations to date. The last 2 years, almost 2 years, since 2023, September, October, negotiations have been ongoing about 24 subjects that need to be settled. And we have no idea, and there's a reason why we have no idea, about the subjects under negotiations. We know that border delineation is a subject of negotiations. We know that from the conversations in the last year plus, we know that Armenia's constitution is a subject of negotiations. Particular clauses in the constitution are subject of negotiations. And many other subjects of this sort, relations on blocking the region, those are all subjects of conversations. But are we also discussing in these negotiations the hostages, the 23 hostages in Baku today? We have no indication that's included in the negotiations. I hope it is. They are included in the negotiations because I cannot imagine a peace treaty signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan when we still have 23 hostages in Baku. What else is in the negotiations is a big question that people have now. any negotiation, during any negotiation, some aspect of the negotiations would be confidential. Most of it will be confidential until some progress has been marked. And then the negotiators, whatever the case may be, will start revealing to the population, to their constituencies, what is being negotiated, part of what is being negotiated, to start gaining confidence among the population. I have not seen anything in the Armenian case as to what what is being negotiated from the government's, the Armenian government's point of view, or from the Azerbaijani side point of view. It is up to each government, Azerbaijan and Armenia, to convince their people, their constituencies, that what they're negotiating is a fair deal. Okay, so we hope that this government as well, at some point soon, I hope, will start discussing some of the subjects under negotiation. As I said, there are at least 24 subjects that have been under negotiations for the last year and a half, 2 years, and hopefully we'll start learning more soon as to what is being negotiated and what is being agreed, more importantly.
And that's the thing. While I find some of this complete doomsaying kind of frustrating to see, if the government is giving us no information, that's naturally an outgrowth of that. So they do need to start cluing people in so they can actually know what to have an opinion on. Otherwise, you're just going to say, no, forget it. There's nothing in here for us.
Yeah. I mean, in my line of work, I don't deal with speculations. I deal with facts. Okay, until I see the facts, I'm not prepared to say this is right or this is wrong. We haven't seen anything yet. All we know right now is they negotiated for five hours a few days ago, and that there will be more negotiations coming up. That's all we know. And beyond that, I am not prepared to speculate, other than to say the sooner more detail are revealed to each leader's constituency, the faster the leaders will gain support for their negotiations.
Well, this leads right into something that I feel is a major weakness of this peace process, as they call it, is the absolute lack of confidence building between the two peoples. Because when we talk about a peace deal, peace, okay, that's one thing, a peace between governments and a normalization of their ties as recognizing each other as governments. But the peace means people living together, or at least next to each other, and we have none of this right now. And in fact, in Azerbaijan, we have people that did dare to talk about peace and coexistence between people, like Barhu Samadov, who was just sentenced to 15 years in jail for what they call treason, but I have never been able to have anyone from that side define to me what his treason is, beyond speaking to a few Armenian people through social media, going to a few of these conferences that they used to have that I noticed don't happen anymore between Armenians and Azerbaijanis and third-party countries. So have you ever seen a landscape in your experience that's been that bad, trying to make peace between peoples, where one side sees the other side as just speaking to them is automatic treason? And where do you go from there?
Yeah, the examples are many when this kind of situation exists in other cases where people have not talked. The tragedy of our case is that up until 91, Azeris and Armenians, Azerbaijanis and Armenians lived together in many communities, both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, in Baku, in other cities. But because of the pogroms, because of the persecution, etc., the peoples have now separated completely, and since probably 92, 93, there have not been any linkages, any connections between ordinary Azerbaijanis, ordinary Armenians, which has helped to develop all sorts of myths and beliefs about each other as to what the intentions of both sides are. So that's one thing we're talking about. Another problem is that we've got a strictly, highly authoritarian, dictatorial regime in Azerbaijan, where speaking with an Armenian is equivalent to treason. I have spoken with a number of Azerbaijanis, scholars, some dissidents, mostly dissidents, but they've asked me not to cite their names in my book for a very understandable reason, because they're afraid of being labeled a traitor or worse. And of course, I will respect their wishes. And you cited examples where Azerbaijani scholars have been arrested because of, in the past, we've seen examples where Azerbaijanis have been arrested because of participating in what we call track 2 activities with Armenians. That is not as pronounced on the Armenian side, fortunately, and that's good. That more Armenians, I think, are willing to speak with Azeris, either abroad or wherever they may have the opportunity. Yes, that is a tragedy. That is a limiting factor in terms of future relations between Azerbaijanis and Armenians. And hopefully, once there is a peace treaty signed, that difficulty will be overcome.
So that leads into one more issue that I've been seeing more and more as a possible concession that Aliyev is bringing up. He says that there are now 300,000 Azerbaijanis who had, back in the Soviet era, been pushed out of Armenia, just like hundreds of thousands of Armenians were kicked out in massacres and pogroms from Azerbaijan. And but he's saying this in a very unilateral way. They must be allowed to return to Armenia in the name of this, living together. So as someone in conflict resolution, naturally, living together is a good thing, but what do you make of this idea, and is Azerbaijan utilizing the idea of living together to actually have their own means?
Look, in general, in international law, there's this concept of the right of return. And if the right of return cannot be executed, cannot be made reality, then there's the question of right of compensation for property, movable and non-movable property lost in the course of forced displacement or displacement caused by fear. So there's this general concept that we have to deal with, we have to be aware of, we have to deal with. There's the question of the Karabakh Armenians' right of return to Karabakh, or right of compensation. And the right of return has to be in dignity and in security. So there are all these issues that we need to address and balance as to what it is that we are demanding. There are two different kinds of rights, different kinds of rights arising from events 20, 30 years apart. We have to take time into consideration, the elapse of time into consideration. The more recent right of return for the Karabakh Armenians is another issue. So there is no clear answer as to how one can resolve these issues. These are all subjects to negotiations. We have international tribunals that have expressed opinions about the right of return of the Karabakh Armenians. All of these need to be taken into account during negotiations on this one subject. This is complicated enough, and multiplied it by 20 other issues, you can see how complicated the negotiations are between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
And it just gives Armenians that siege mentality idea. Not only are we having to make peace with them, but suddenly we have to welcome back 300,000, when at the same time, nobody is talking about the right of Armenians to go back to Azerbaijan, because frankly, they can't go back to Azerbaijan. That's an impossibility to live there. And then the Artsaksis were just ethnically cleansed 2 years ago, whereas both sides in the other case were 30 years ago. Is there a primacy in international law that should be given to the ones that just lost their homes? Or is this equation between, well, Azerbaijanis left Armenia 30 years ago, therefore you must let them back if you want them to go back to Artsakh who just left?
There is one point that you need to take into account. The Karabakh Armenians want to return. Can you say the same thing about the Azerbaijanis who left Armenia, who were forced out of Armenia in the 80s? Do they want to come back to Armenia? I don't know. I have not seen anything. It impresses me the point that the Azerbaijanis who have left Armenia are being used as a football for political reasons. All of this need to be taken into account, not because of this casual conversation, but taking all the facts into account.
Yes, now, when we look at the wider thing, we've been hearing more about this resolution from some of the big players again. Of course, Russia is always involved and always commenting on it. But lately, we've seen the Trump administration, Secretary of State Marco Rubio in particular, has made multiple statements, as have some of the others in the administration. Some have even called for the freeing of the hostages, the Armenian hostages in Baku, which was, I must admit, very unexpected for me to hear from them. So does the U.S. have some leverage here that they're actually willing to use, or is this just a temporary thing?
Look, the main point I want to make here is that I don't think we should. I think we should have learned lessons by now that we cannot rely on others to put into effect our own rights. Not because America is intervening, that hostages in Baku should be released. Yes, thank you for America intervening and demanding that softly. Actually demanding that these hostages be released, but because of the legal issues involved, that these hostages must be released. They are held illegally at this point. They are hostages. POWs after a war is over must be returned. The political leaders of Karabakh held in Azerbaijan are held simply because they are Armenians, not because they have committed anything. Their trials are a farce, really a farce. The defenders, Armenian defenders, Siranush Sahagyan, has published a report on one of the cases in Baku. It's an excellent report where the arguments are made as to why this trial is a farce and is a violation of international law. So all of this need to be taken into consideration.
Now, do you see any linkages between this settling of an external conflict that's been going on now and the crackdowns that we've been seeing lately within Armenia?
Look, this is a complicated, complex issue, the crackdown. There is the conflict between the state and church, frankly, has no place in our life. It is only dividing our population at a critical time in our history when unity among our population, unity on the political front as to what it is we want, how we want it, and what we want to do is critical. It's paramount at this point. And church and state conflict is only dividing us and not serving our purpose. Second, the language used in this conflict between church and state is unacceptable, is really unacceptable. You cannot call, no matter what the church has or has not done, or the clergy have or have not done, you cannot call publicly, a government official cannot call publicly a church representative Shenaparo. Okay? That's unheard of. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable, this kind of language. Has to stop. And the sooner the better.
It's been making us an international mockery, unfortunately.
And the persecution of civilians, non-clerical people. It's not acceptable. When the Procurator General of a country gets on television, on government channel, and lays out all the accusations against those under arrest, with the accused not present, with the accused not being able to defend itself. This is called human rights violation, fundamental rights violation. You can't do that because you're prejudicing already the court. You're prejudicing, you meaning the Procurator General, prejudicing already any jury members when the issue is brought in front of the courts. It cannot be done. It has to stop, and the sooner the better.
Yes, it's been very sobering times for the internal situation along with external. So I guess to bring this back, just to round up, you made references to your book and that you've spoken to various Azerbaijanis for it. Any kind of interesting insights that you pulled out while you were doing this research?
Yeah, the book is the outcome of 2.5 years of research I've conducted on the issue, on the 32 plus years of mediation and negotiations. And what struck me most is the number of opportunities we have missed in those 30 years to resolve the issue in our favor. And unwisely, we have missed those opportunities. Of course, the principal reason why the mediation failed was Azerbaijan's intransigence and decision to go to war. But we also have been intransigent on a number of occasions where we could have had a favorable outcome instead of what happened in 2023.
Well, I hope the next time you're here, we have something more positive to talk about. Thank you so much for being with us, Hrair.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And thank you for joining CivilNet.